Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're looking forward to a very exciting conversation. We're going to dive into creating the data foundation for an optimal customer experience, and that spans multiple industries. We have an experts of panel members here. Mallory Freeman, she is Vice President and in charge of Enterprise Data Analytics at UPS. We have Manav Misra, he's Chief Data Officer at Regions Bank. And we have Prasanna Dhoré, he's Chief Data Officer at Fiserv. So as you can see, we're covering payment processing, consumer and retail banking, as well as transportation and logistics. So we have a broad expertise here. As Tim had mentioned, please use a QR code. You can scan your questions. We'll field it throughout our discussion. So as Greg mentioned, we're going to dive into real use cases, and let's kick things off. We're talking about the data foundation, the data stack, the data infrastructure for organizations. Prasanna, can you give us some context and a framework on the different elements in the data stack, how it has changed over time, and what should we be doing in terms of investments at each element as we consider AI applications?
Thank you. I look at the investments in the infrastructure in three wide categories. And the first one, I would say, scale and demand. The second thing I would say is all data in one place. And third, I would say, finding meaning in data. Now, let's sort of give a high-level overview what I mean by that. Scale on demand. And those of you know, I think 2006, when Amazon launched AWS EC2 and ES3, which is the storage and computing capability in the cloud, that sort of launched the cloud computing in mainstream. Yeah. Then in 2012, some of you may know that GPUs were available in the cloud, and this sort of shifted. I would say this shift to the cloud sort of democratized AI. So any company with any size could go and get access to AI applications. And this, you don't have to go invest billions of dollars to try to create IT infrastructure. And this pay-as-you-go changed the game. And this is the first one, scaling. The second thing about, all data in one place, I don't know if you recall, in 2004, Hadoop helped us create at least save unstructured data like weblogs and things like that. And then in 2012, we had the data lake concept being introduced, which was basically just saving both unstructured data and structured data. Then in 2017, the lakehouse architecture was introduced, which sort of combined the flexibility of the data lake and the dependability of the warehouses like Oracle and IBM DB2. So this unique combination of data, which is not only bringing all the data together, but also the dependability of the warehouses, was another movement, another infrastructure investment. And the third one, when I say finding meaning in data fast, if you recall, to a large extent till about 2017, the way the data was being retrieved was using keyword searches, keyword searches. And then, and the way I normally describe is that a keyword search is like, you're looking through a keyhole and then trying to look at the data. But 2017, as you all know, was an incredible year where the whole technology of, transporter technology was introduced, where you just don't look at, and the whole self-attention, if you recall, was introduced. And the idea was that, the way I explain self-attention is like, hey, you don't have to go look through a keyhole. You can open the whole door and look at the whole sentences. And that was I would say, pivotal point where you could go look at the whole sentence, look at the meaning of the words, and also the context of it. And that was a very pivotal moment where that sort of started the whole LLM, GPT kind of revolutions. And so these three things were really, I would say, infrastructure investments, in data. So in short, 2006 gave us scale. 2012 to 2017 gave us unified data, and then 2017 onwards is the whole LLM and GPT. So these were the three important structures in the data stack.
Let's hitchhike off this point about scale. And Mallory, in terms of logistics, transportation, the amount of unstructured data that UPS has to manage, how has that evolved in terms of your technology and your investment in your infrastructure layer?
Sure. So great question. If you look at kind of the whole theme of this event, the business value of data, the underpinning of that value is being able to turn data and AI models into actual solutions for our customers. And so we have a ton of data at UPS, as you can imagine. And so as we look at the best ways to turn our data into information into knowledge into wisdom, building out the right structures and foundations through our data strategy, and in setting up kind of our entire enterprise for being able to turn data into value is really the cornerstone of our work. So if you look at UPS as a whole, innovation is just in our DNA. We were founded in 1907, and we're a technology company to our core, again, seeking the best way to make an impact for our customers. And let's talk about something right now that's certainly hitting complexity. We're all trying to navigate changing international conditions and trade. So that's a big deal for our customers. So if you look at the data that we have at UPS, so we've got 20 petabytes of data ready and curated for AI, structured and unstructured. Our total data state is multiple times more than that. And just for context, you can think of that as easily 3 times the size of the entire Library of Congress. So how to take all of that information and make a better customer experience. Here we have our next-gen brokerage suite of tools that enable that global commerce. And so taking things like, how do you expect the in value of a good moving across a border? We've got global checkout that actually allows customers, and is the only one in our industry, to guarantee a landed cost at the time of purchase. How do we do it? How do we get that customer solution in this time of tremendous complexity? We tap into our models. We tap into the insights that we have about past traces and mapping goods to those harmonized codes that are really the backbone of international trade. We bring in GenAI assistance through our Export Assure suite that allows those that are navigating a shipment to understand the best way to move that shipment through to final completion. And then as a package is actually moving through, we're following the trail of a package for operational efficiency, even more stream of data, and as well if a customer has a question along the way, we're leveraging things like our virtual assistant or our chatbot. So data is powering every aspect of that global supply chain, simplifying the customer experience, and our goal as technologists within the organization is to unlock the business value for our partners across the enterprise.
There's a lot of interesting points here, and I think one of the topics that come to my mind is the technology investment and how fast we move from the big data analytic area to now AI. Manav, how are you modernizing your legacy systems? Because when I heard Hadoop, and there's a whole bunch of NoSQL databases out there, how have you pivoted, or was there a case where you said, okay, we've made enough of an investment in this type of data warehouse solution or database technology, and now we have to pivot for the AI era?
Yeah, and if you're familiar with Regions Bank, if you trace back some of the preceding banks that came together to form what is Regions today, they go back decades. So we're now in 15 states with retail banking, and then nationally with some of our commercial banking, and 20,000 employees. But all of those preceding banks that came had their own technologies, and those came together. So we rode all the waves that Prasanna talked about, going even further back than that with mainframe systems and enterprise data warehouses and relational systems, and then on to Hadoop, and then on to lake houses, and now a cloud-based infrastructure that allows us to get views of our customers in real time and be able to address their needs in the moment. So whether it's servicing these customers, so if they want to come to a branch and get their address changed, or call our contact center, or go onto the mobile app, an omni-channel view into their needs and addressing that, but also stopping fraud in real time, and being able to do all of that allows, or is enabled by that data infrastructure that we've built out, that foundation, which is now more and more progressing onto a cloud-based lakehouse with a variety of AI tools that we deploy there.
And I think, as we move along this data technology migration or evolution, keeping customer consistency and accuracy, how are you able to manage that, Prasanna?
Consistency in data is very important, and when I say consistency, it is making sure it's the same thing represented in the same way everywhere. I mean, that's consistency. And for instance, we support more than 3,000 banks. So a loan portfolio, for instance, a loan application could have, some processor recording something as a monthly income, and someone could have another bank could record it as a annual income. So if it's not consistent, AI is not going to work. Okay. So what we do, consistency, we look at 4 dimensions of consistency. One is obviously labels, which is important. You've got consistent on labels. Second thing is on units. Then third is on formats. I mean, this goes on. And also finally, semantic, search. Is there consistency on that? An example I give is that, hey, if you see okay, is okay neutral or is okay good? So one of the things we got to be careful is that consistency is one of the important aspects that we keep looking at, and we measure that on a regular basis.
Maybe Mallory, from your eyes, how do you think of data accuracy and this demand in terms of all the route optimization you're doing in terms of movement of packages for a wide variety of businesses across a whole host of geographies? How have you been able to manage that aspect?
Sure, and great question, because the precision of data, especially when it comes to last mile logistics, whether it's the very location of a loading dock or a preference for exactly where and when a pickup or a drop-off can occur, that can be the make or break in terms of minutes of delivery. That adds up to huge impact in terms of sustainability and our cost to serve, quite frankly. So we look, as the other panelists have mentioned, and really strong to see strong technology background being the underpinning. So having accurate data available for our AI models is the very foundation of turning that data all the way through the knowledge, wisdom, information pyramid. And so as we look at what it can mean to UPS, it's not just about saving money or having a more efficient operation. Again, it goes back to that customer first mindset. So, and it's a customer first organization, it's what will make a better experience for our customers. Can we use the precise trail of information about a package as it moves through our network to provide an even better experience, whether that's navigating an international border, as I talked about earlier, doing that with more simplicity than ever, whether it's providing a more accurate prediction of when a package will arrive, or whether it's feeding a prediction actually into an algorithm to allow you to have a better delivery because we've been able to classify an address or talk about exactly where and when a package can be delivered. So throughout our network, we've got tools like Orion doing last mile logistics, our network suite of tools, helping with that, fleet of, planes, trains, and our tractor trailers that are out moving goods across the country, across the world. And again, how to weave all of those things together. Well, it's not just a scanning network anymore, it's actually a sensing network. And taking that real-time data drives efficiency, but even more importantly, that customer experience.
And Manav, you get to handle both aspects. consistency across your customer base as well as accuracy. What is the bigger challenge as we look at AI applications that you're trying to support?
Yeah, so as I described, I mean, we've got lots of legacy systems, and one of the big challenges was how do we get information out of these systems, which are designed for batch processing. So typically in the old world, every night you would get a data load, and then you could then bring it into an enterprise data warehouse, set it up for analysis for next day. Now we're looking at being able to provide the same view to all our bankers across channels, all our customers in digital tools. How do you get that data out of those systems? How do you then distribute it in really short order to all the possible consumers of that data? And so we had to implement change data capture from the mainframe system. So when something changed, you captured it instantly, you brought it out. It was then made available through a publish and subscribe mechanisms to all possible consumers. We had to have a no latency database that would allow us to then consume that. So we've built out an architecture that we call customer DNA, which essentially brings together all this data in real time and gives us a view into our customer, which can then be used for things like real-time marketing purposes, so giving them insights and recommendations on things that they may want to do, fraud protection of those customers, and a number of other things that we do. They're servicing their requests in real time across channels.
A lot of perspective here. Now we're going to enter into the AI applications and kind of the dominant theme of the day, GenAI, large language models. Prasanna, how are you having your coworkers develop applications working with LLMs?
Before I answer that, I also want to talk about data quality, which is, I think the way we look at it is fit for purpose. I mean, that's something we look at because, and every, we look at data in terms of 5 dimensions. Is the data correct? Is the data complete? Is the data connected? And is the data consistent? We just talked about consistency. And is the data compliant to contractual and regulations? So these 5 things we look at data quality. And what happens when I say fit for purpose, it could so happen that certain data is maybe incomplete, but for the purpose of AI, you can use synthetic data to go do it. So I think that's something we keep in mind, is the data fit for purpose, and does it fall in these 5 dimensions of, hey, can we use the data? And that's what we keep doing that. To answer your question on LLM. So what's your question on LLM again?
Well, since you mentioned the 5 dimensions, what is the biggest challenge for the workers to launch GenAI related applications?
So one of the things that, as I said, is you have to have a united data. I mean, that's something that's important. That's one. The data has to be united. Either, we spend a lot of time in keying and linking and do all that. Data has to be united because we have 135 million people interact with us in a month. That's a lot of people. So, a 360-degree view of a consumer is absolutely important. So that connection, when I say data connection, that's important. And number 2, there are new tools that's been launched from 2016-17, which is all streaming tools like Kafka. I mean, those things are so important. What happens is that when in GenAI applications, it is that real-time access to data is what it makes that GenAI really powerful, because it'll have the most recent information. So the question, data has to be connected. You should have real streaming tools. That makes GenAI really powerful.
And you brought thought to my mind when I'm thinking about collecting data. UPS, you're collecting a lot of consumer and business data. Have you run into any challenges in terms of leveraging that set of data for large language model analysis?
Sure. So as you move forward and you're leveraging data to drive business value, it's all about doing so responsibly. And that's kind of at the very nature of being a UPS. Our core values, encompass integrity, value, excellence, responsibility. That applies to everything we do, data included. We have specific AI guardrails. We have standards and policies in place that help us with having the right fit for purpose of data for a model, and the context certainly matters. With regard to leveraging LLM, it can unlock, kind of quite a bit more specificity in the type of response that's given to make it more helpful. We're not leveraging technology in a vacuum. It's to help solve a problem. It's helping put that customer first if we're giving a reply to a customer in a virtual assistant, or if we're doing something back office, giving that employee a better experience into how to synthesize and leverage the data. So it's really all about getting the right ecosystem in place for a platform solution overall, and then for a given application, finding the right way to apply the technology. So.
Jumping to you, Manav, I think, as we think about different AI applications and how customers are using it, think about your organization. Can you give us specifics on how you're empowering your employee base to use third-party LLMs to maybe enhance your productivity or workforce? When you're thinking about risk analytics across a customer, are they able to access LLMs to get some insight on that customer in terms of approving or assessing risk?
Yeah, so our big focus has been making sure that we provide the governance on unstructured data before it gets fed into LLMs of any kind. And so the challenge there was that in addition to the unstructured data that was in our data lake, which we had a good handle on, there was a variety of unstructured data across SharePoint sites and so on and so forth. And how do we make sure that there's no sensitive data in there? How do we make sure that if that data is fed into an LLM, that it doesn't get leaked out or used for training, etc. So we've spent a considerable amount of time putting those guardrails in place. And then we're using Bedrock within an AWS environment to have the flexibility to choose between LLMs as we build out solutions that are GenAI based.
Yeah, that's a lot of qualifications in terms of using LLMs. Prasanna, in terms of payment processing, how are you managing the use of LLMs in order to make it a more efficient process for the organization?
I mean, the use of the data from payment processing. This is an application that we're doing, which is very interesting to the banks. As you know, that the credit report of a small business is pretty, I would say, 30, 40, 50% are basically, I would say, invisible. You don't have a lot of information. If you have information, it is dated. So, for instance, the credit report of a small business, it takes months to get updated. So we are working with the bureaus where we can, using tools like Kafka and all that, we're able to give payment information on small businesses that can help them to get loans very easily. I mean, much better. But just for those of you who are statisticians, just using payment data, you can approve 5% more loan applications without changing the risk profile. So that's one of the ways we're using payment data to do that. And we're also using payment data to help our merchants. For instance, one of the things we're doing is we have a POS system called Clover. So we help our merchants, we also help our merchants' customers. The way we're helping our merchants using payment data is that they are now can look at and say how they are performing across their peer group. What is their average sales? How are they compared against, on a Monday or a Tuesday? And it's all based on AI, where it goes and gets, using real-time programs to get the data, show exactly how they're performing, and recommending what else they need to do. That's one of the things we're doing with AI. The second thing, obviously, we are not there yet, but we're trying to figure out, which big companies have, is almost like an easy button. Can the merchants hit a easy button to go, reach their customers? So these are some of the things we're doing with the payment data.
We're going to pivot a little bit to ethics, and we're just going to scratch the surface. Mallory, could you give us some insight in terms of organization structure how UPS is organizing the accountability of AI and the use of it?
Yeah, so as we look at, ethics falls back into that realm of values, and it's, responsible AI is really all of our responsibility. So we're looking at this from a lens of the cultural change involved across the organization, business and technology leaders together. From an accountability lens, we take that very seriously within our technology org. And so as we move forward, we're fully aligned with our leadership on our priorities for where we want to use the technology to drive value. And then again, we leverage our internal processes, our guardrails, and our standards to make sure that anything and everything that we deploy or work with upholds, the very nature of, data ethics, model ethics. You've got to make sure you're covered on information security, compliance, thinking about training of models, but also watching them as they're deployed. That's the observability side and that overall culture. So we're looking at it from a really multifaceted perspective, I would say. And with that in place, what you can do then is drive business value again with these models, whether that's opening up new doors, so using AI to drive new business like in our UPS digital case, or doing things like improving our efficiency across gateways or the customer experience. So that's really important to get the underpinning right across the full portfolio.
A lot of interesting points. Manav, can you give your parting words of advice for companies looking to start their AI data journey today?
Yeah, I think some of the points that Prasanna made earlier around unifying data and then having the right tools to find insights in that data, the other piece that is critically important is to make sure that you have the right governance structures. And we talked about accountability. Fortunately, in banks, we've put in the various lines of defense, as they're called, first line, second line, third line. And they're designed to put in all the risk assessments and then the controls in place, because human beings can make the same kinds of mistakes that AI does, right? They can have biases, and those controls address those kinds of breakdowns that are potentially possible from human beings. Well, the same kind of controls need to be applied for AI as well. You need to make sure that there's no bias, there's no hallucination, and it's basically taking those controls, modifying them where necessary, but putting them in place to deliver the right results, which fall back to the organization's values and principles.
Great. We had a lot of inbound questions that we were not able to field on our panel today. Please feel free to reach out to these experts during the networking session, and you'll see them around during the conversation. And I think there's a lot of interesting questions that we couldn't get to in the time limit. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you.